good evening, or good morning, or good day, whatever it may be. That theme you heard in the beginning of this show, some of you who might be experienced in classical music or music in general might know it as Prokofiev's Cat's theme from Peter and the Wolf, and it is purely for that reason that I play the song due to the fact that today we will be reading and maybe even critiquing a bit Ernest Hemingway's Cat in the Rain. And I played that song purely because I had no other option. It was either that or Cat vs. Dog by Kara Benito. I know no other song, I'm afraid. What I'll be interested in doing is exploring a bit the possibility of having both a reading show on this radio channel as well as maybe even critiquing a piece of literature, whatever I reading. What's important to me is to see today whether it would make more sense for me to prepare an essay from before or else to simply have my references and my topics prepared as notes beforehand to discuss with the audience, with you, or else to simply just talk. In any case, my references, my one reference, because I did not prepare all that many this time, will be available in the Discord channel in the description below, as always. And I believe it will be high time to begin reading Ernest Hemingway's Cat in the Rain. There were only two Americans stopping at the hotel. They did not know any of the people they passed on the stairs on their way to and from the room. The room was on the second floor, facing the sea. It also faced the public garden and the war monument. There were big palms and green benches in the public garden. In the good weather there was always an artist with his easel. The artists liked the way the palms grew, and the bright colors of the hotels facing the gardens and the sea. Italians came from a long way off to look up at the war monument. It was made of bronze and glistened in the rain. It was raining. The rain dripped from the palm trees. Water stood in pools on the gravel paths. The sea broke in a long line in the rain and slipped back down to the beach to come up and break again in a long line in the rain. The motor cars were gone from the square by the war monument. Across the square, in the doorway of the cafe, a waiter stood looking out at the empty square. The American wife stood at the window looking out. Outside, right under the window, a cat was crouched under one of the dripping green tables. The cat was trying to make herself so compact that she would not be dripped on. "I'm going down to get that kitty," the American wife said. "I'll do it," her husband offered from the bed. "No, I'll get it. The poor kitty out trying to keep dry under a table." The husband went on reading, lying propped up with the two pillows at the foot of the bed. "Don't get wet," he said. The wife went downstairs and the hotel owner stood up and bowed to her as she passed the office. His desk was at the far end of the office. He was an old man and very tall. "Il piove," the wife said. She liked the hotel keeper. "Sì, sì, signora. Brutto tempo. It is very bad weather." He stood behind his desk in the far end of the dim room. The wife liked him. She liked the deadly serious way he received any complaints. She liked his dignity. She liked the way he wanted to serve her. She liked the way he felt about being a hotel keeper. She liked his old, heavy face and big hands. Liking him, she opened the door and looked out. It was raining harder. A man in a rubber cape was crossing the empty square to the cafe. The cat would be around, to the right. Perhaps she could go along under the eaves. As she stood in the doorway, an umbrella opened behind her. It was the maid who looked after the room. "You must not get wet," she smiled, speaking Italian. Of course, the hotel keeper had sent her. With the maid holding the umbrella over her, she walked along the gravel path until she was under their window. The table was there, washed bright green in the rain, but the cat was gone. She was suddenly disappointed. The maid looked up at her. "Ha perduto qualche cosa, signora?" "There was a cat," said the American girl. "A cat?" "Si, il gatto." "A cat," the maid laughed. "A cat in the rain." "Yes," she said, "under the table." Then, oh, I wanted it so much. I wanted a kitty. When she talked English, the maid's face tightened. "Come, signora," she said. "We must get back inside. You will be wet." "I suppose so," said the American girl. They went back along the gravel path and passed in the door. The maid stayed outside to close the umbrella. As the American girl passed the office, the padrone bowed from his desk. Something felt very small and tight inside the girl. The padrone made her feel very small and at the same time really important. She had a momentary feeling of being of supreme importance. She went on up the stairs. She opened the door of the room. George was on the bed, reading. "Did you get the cat?" he asked, putting the book down. "It was gone." "Wonder where it went to," he said, resting his eyes from reading. She sat down on the bed. "I wanted it so much," she said. "I don't know why I wanted it so much. I wanted that poor kitty. It isn't fun to be a poor kitty out in the rain." George was reading again. She went over and sat in front of the mirror of the dressing table, looking at herself with the hand glass. She studied her profile, first one side and then the other. Then she studied the back of her head and her neck. "Don't you think it would be a good idea if I let my hair grow out?" she asked, looking at her profile again. George looked up and saw the back of her neck, clipped close like a boy's. "I like it the way it is." "I get so tired of it," she said. "I get so tired of looking like a boy." George shifted his position in the bed. He hadn't looked away from her since she started to speak. "You look pretty darn nice," he said. She laid the mirror down on the dresser and went over to the window and looked out. It was getting dark. "I want to pull my hair back tight and smooth and make a big knot at the back that I can feel," she said. "I want to have a kitty to sit on my lap and purr when I stroke her." "Yeah," George said from the bed. "And I want to eat at a table with my own silver, and I want candles, and I want it to be spring, and I want to brush my hair out in front of a mirror, and I want a kitty, and I want some new clothes." "Oh, shut up and get something to read," George said. He was reading again. His wife looked out the window. It was quite dark now, and still raining in the palm trees. "Anyway, I want a cat," she said. "I want a cat. I want a cat now. If I can't have a long hair or any fun, I can have a cat." George was not listening. He was reading his book. His wife looked out of the window, where the light had come in the square. Someone knocked at the door. "Avanti!" George said. He looked up from his book. In the doorway stood the maid. She held a big tortoise-shell cat pressed tight in his shirt and swung down against her body. "Excuse me," she said. "The padrone has asked me to bring this for the signora." And that was Cat in the Rain by Ernest Hemingway. I'll give you all a minute to ruminate on this writing, and I'll be here in a couple of minutes for a short discussion on this piece of literature. Thank you very much for listening. back. Of course, wasn't that long. Not exactly a minute, but a bit of time anyway. And there are a few things I noticed about the piece that I wanted to talk about. To begin with is the pace of reading. I'm something I thought about before I chose this piece is I did not know how long it would take me to read it. This is not something I do very often, and I decided to do this short piece for a very good reason. This is a piece with a very fast amount of pace. Ernest Hemingway's writing is very short, curt. There is no sentimentality in the way he writes. It's a very matter of fact writing style, very, in a way, almost masculine, which is something rather quite interesting, especially given the era, the modern era, where that piece of literature is coming from. And I wanted to try that so I could see exactly how long it would take me to go through this. It seems like it took me only 10 minutes, which is quite fun. It gives me a bit more time, a bit more leeway to compare to future um, uh, episodes of this radio show where I will be reading maybe longer piece, longer pieces of literature. Um, a few pieces of interesting information I also quite liked about this piece is the idea of things you want, expectations, and their reality in real space. I will quote a few pieces from this part. I like. Now that is a word that is repeated often, very often, by the American wife, or later on, the American girl. I like, and then I want. There's always the disconnect between liking something and between actually achieving and wanting something. That disconnect creates conflict, of course, and that is something that Ernest Hemingway clearly shows here. Uh, something something that you could notice is, for instance, the very boyish nature of the woman, something which she does not like. I believe, pointing up the thing, hold on. I'm going to quote Hagopian here, the reference which I will be putting down within the piece of within the Discord chat. Excuse me for the delay. I must have lost the page. I'm quoting here. It would appear that the American girl wants to be like her mother when she says, I want to pull my hair back tight and smooth and make a big knot at the back that I can feel. Interwoven with the symbol of maternal femininity is her wish for a kitty, now an obvious symbol for a child. But George apparently prefers the world of fiction to the real world of adulthood. Oh, shut up and get something to read. Now that is a very clear that's purely the point of conflict here. The boyishness of the girl's hairstyle, the fact that they do not eat with their own cutlery, it indicates travel, constant travel. They are in a foreign world, a very exotic Italian place. It implies that the idea of a homebody, it is a conflict between the homebody woman and the man who is trying to mold her in a way to make her fit what he would like. He would like a traveling buddy more than a companion. And the point that proves this, in my opinion, as clearly as it could, is oh, shut up and get something to read. Now, that is the purest example of this, purely because he would like her to be like him, to read. Someone who's very clearly focused on fiction. Contrast that to the Padrone. She liked the Padrone. There is a certain when, whereas George lies on the bed, even after offering her, the Padrone stands up and speaks to her. There's that sort of, I believe, let's see exactly what Mr. Hagopian calls it. He calls it the gesture of masculine service, and that is one of the reasons why that contrast is so powerful. The idea, the different figures, the want and the reality that she has to um, go to argue with, the which eventually all culminate in the form of the cat, the kitty. The idea of the kitty is a small, gentle, furry creature, something that is to be protected, something that has to be housed, a child at the end of the day. And that is the very symbol of femininity, the very symbol of maternity that is being hunted by the the American wife. In fact, when the kitty disappears, she's no longer the American wife, she's the American girl. So we see that very clearly within that context. Um, the and It is hammered in, this idea of expectations and reality, by the last part of this writing, when there is a cat. I want when where the woman says, "I want a cat. I want a cat now," and her prayer is in a way responded to when a big tortoiseshell cat appears. Not the sweet small kitty, but a sort of a twisted idea of it. A big tortoiseshell cat, one that's large and ungainly, unbabylike, if you will. And that cements the idea of, as I said, expectation and reality. This is played into particularly the idea of symmetry. There was always, for every point Hemingway makes, there is a counterpoint, something which Hagopian goes over very well within his writing, making it very clear where he avoids the criticism of certain other critics in general, no more going over things like psychoanalytics and, or feminist criticism, instead preferring to go over the stylistic idea of it, um, where he only gives short mention to the opening of the book, particularly the garden and the war memorial. Now that's particularly important and something which I will elaborate on now. I've the garden is of course the symbol of femininity in this situation, purely because this is a symbol of fertility, especially with the rain. However, there is a slight notch in it in this particular description. First of all, fertility is not enhanced by the rain. It is deterred, particularly when we notice the fact that the artist is no longer here. The artist is afraid of painting in the rain, of course for a very good reason, but it also implies that the rain is reducing her fertility, as well as the war memorial. There is nothing more destructive than war, and hence there is nothing that it completely perverts the idea of the garden. Another another point we should notice about the idea of fertility. She likes the old man. Now, in the most simple Freudian, um, in the most simple Freudian, I wouldn't even call it analysis, purely because it's such a ubiquitous idea at this point. There is a slight bit, in my opinion, of electrocomplex here, a very fatherly figure that she likes. Of course, I wouldn't go as far as to imply a certain amount of sexual attraction, rather a certain amount of wish fulfillment. She finds it sexually attractive within George, the idea of a man who is serious, a man who enjoys being very tied to reality. This man is tied to his job. He knows what's going on. He isn't stuck in a book. That give it is, effectively speaking, not simply what she does not want exactly what she says she wants. She wants much more than that, and we get to encounter it here, mostly because Hemingway excellently uses a variety of things called the way Hemingway gives a bent to whatever he is writing. Chapman's Soft Filters, an essay, a journal article on this, discusses the idea of a Hemingway that is very willing to give a very exploratory understanding of this situation, not willing to tell us what is actually going on, but rather willing to give a variety of lenses, not exactly each distinct ones, but ones that constantly merge and blend with each other. The narrator, the woman, and George, given each given certain importance in different points and creating a sort of tug of war, which at the end of the day gives us a very ambiguous ending. In a way, there is also an amount of want from George. He says it very clearly. I like your hair as it is. If I'm quoting correctly, let's see. I like it the way it is. That's the exact and proper quote. It's very clear that George here is the only character whose expectations are met, right? He's got his travel buddy, even though she seems to be rather unwilling. And it seems, from a patriarchal perspective, that George has everything cut out for him. I've seen a few criticisms, maybe which look at George in a more positive light. Simply put, the idea of the wife being too needy and George holding his own. Rather, these are, in my opinion, quite old ones which I do not find, I do not think come from a perspective which isn't, at least not completely patriarchal. However, I do disagree with them purely because in this situation the focal point is not the woman, it is not the man, it is not the narrator. The focal point is purely, in my opinion, the conflict. I feel that Ernest Hemingway has not given us a reason to support any of them. He's given us no context to support any of them. The there is no way we could take a side here, purely because we cannot make any assumptions, in my opinion. And I'd feel rather um, I'd feel like I'm rather incorrect if I were to tell you I support one side, I support the other. I believe Ernest Hemingway is attempting to draw a certain idea of the fly on the wall. The narrator himself is the fly on the wall, and he's, in my opinion, attempting to draw us into that situation. We don't really know what's going on, but we can see it happen. We can see it unfold in our very eyes, and that is something. That's one of the reasons why I quite like this piece. I will now be speaking on the stylistic aspect of this. I do like the, and this is less of a criticism and more simply something which I quite enjoy about this piece of literature. Going over, I particularly like, as I said earlier, the style of description, very short and curt. There were big palms and green benches in the public garden, very minimalist, in a way almost utilitarian. I like it not because it is the exact opposite of a show don't tell situation. I like it purely because it's all we need. Yes, do we need to know what was in that garden? Do we need to know what the war memorial looks like? No, but it is important that we know that they are there. It's very important that we know that the kitty is small, that the kitty is meant to be protected, and not the large tortoiseshell one that we get at the end. And that is particularly why I enjoy his shortcut writing. And this is something which is aided by the sentence structure. The sentences are very short due to the fact that they're, of course, arguments. Very curt. I'll do it. No, I'll get it. The poor kitty out trying to keep dry under a table. Very natural. Very spontaneous. The simpler language used is something which complements us greatly. If we are to go over the Caesarian idea of a sign, a reference, and a referent, this minimalist approach gives us a sort of conversation, gives us a matter of conversational. Um, excuse me, let me reiterate myself. I'm very sorry for that point. If we are to go with the Caesarian idea of sign, reference, and referent, the short relationship between the referent between the reference and the sign, which occur within normal conversation, in a way is replicated here. We have a sign, the green bench. Of course, no, of course, the simplicity of it implies a reference. It's like a referent, which eventually implies a reference, but that is something which we don't need. It's something which is not required in a conversation. It is It is going far too fast to simply go into the detail of a reference, rather requiring a simple referent. It works, it is utilitarian, and it makes it enjoyable to read. Another part that I quite like is how the short sentences and these curt reference sign thesaurian words all build up within the American wife. She is, of course, the main speaker, given that she is almost constantly talking. And you can notice the build up for the want and the need into a crescendo till the end, wherein she goes on one long sentence. I want to pull my hair back tight and smooth, and all that, there, straight until I can have a cat. And you can notice she's constantly letting it out, being interrupted occasionally by George, of course, maintaining that pace. But up until that, but in throughout the whole thing, you just see a block of text, a block of emotion, which then expands a lot of detail in a very simple, yes, English is a very, but it's a very emotional English and it's a very enjoyable style of English. I've been talking for about 20 minutes now, and frankly, I'm quite out of order. I've run out of points to talk about purely because this is I did not plan my program all that well. Of course, I'll try to fix it next time. To whoever watched, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found the criticism good. I, of course, do like me a lot of criticism, and I do want you, if simply for, if you were to use the term kick my ass and tell me exactly where I did wrong, I'd be very happy to listen. You can find me on the Discord chat, link in the description below. I thank you very much for listening in. Goodbye.